Greetings and welcome to the Elementality podcast. I'm Carl Richards, super excited that you're here and really excited to have a chat today with Matt Mulcock Matt, you're in Salt Lake, aren't you?
Yeah, Salt Lake City.
Very cool. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Carl. This is really an interesting experience for me because I hear you so much on, Elementality, the Carl and Kitz's podcast.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool to be sitting here actually talking to you now, as opposed to just listening.
Well, I'm just glad you agreed to come on after listening to Kitz's and Carl. That thing's so bad.
You guys are great. You guys are great.
I'm just kidding. Well, you know what I'd love to do is sort of start at maybe just not quite at the beginning, but back up just a little bit, and tell us, like, why did you get into this, like, speaking broadly, this job of financial advice? Why did you get into it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I wish I had some like amazing story of how I found my calling from the beginning. I was born to do this. It's not at all true. I've always liked helping people, and I've always liked having an impact in something that matters. So in a whole nother life, that was in the fitness industry. I did that for several years, and I thought that was kind of going to be my path. And then kind of through the course of several events, I realized that it's really hard to make good money in the fitness industry. And so, like, being a personal trainer and all that. So long story short, transitioned into real estate and kind of just started bouncing around to different things, trying to find something that really fit for me. I was doing real estate at the time, doing some like house flipping things and just all that kind of stuff. And had one of my friends knew I was kind of looking for more of a career. And he called me one day and just said, "Hey, you should check out Fidelity. I've been working here for a few years. It's a really great company. You should check it out." So that's literally where it started. And I checked it out. I got hired as low as you possibly can go as a customer service rep, but it seemed like something to at least give it a shot to see what it could turn into. And the rest is really history from there. I've been in it for now 10 years. Fidelity was fantastic. I worked there for 5 years. Wonderful training there. I got my CFP there. It really is where I transitioned and realized over my course of my 5 years there, like, holy cow, I can make an impact in something that really matters. It's a never-ending learning journey for me. I'm never done learning. I love that. And I can engage with people. It kind of like checked all these boxes that I didn't even know were missing for me. And so that's where it started. And then after 5 years there, I transitioned over to where I am now with Dentist Advisors.
Very cool. I can't help but ask, but was that Fidelity job in Salt Lake?
Yeah. So I started in Salt Lake, again, the lowest possible position you can even think of. They call them pre-licensed, right? You're no Series 7, no licenses at all. They help you get licensed. So I was in the Salt Lake phone center. Basically, I was on the phone. So then from there, you get your licenses, you move up from there, and then moved out to California. My wife got into graduate school. We had a chance to move out there, and I moved out with Fidelity and transitioned into what they call investment centers, like branches. And I was in Orange County working in a branch, and that actually right there was really where my job turned into a career. I was able to get my CFP. I started sitting in front of clients, literally probably 5 clients a day, 5 days a week, just drinking from a fire hose, sitting, a lot of exposure to different situations and communicating with clients. That's where I really got hooked. And it was like, I love this. I love talking to clients about this. And so, I ended up coming back to Utah and hooking up with Dentist Advisors.
Yeah. That's where my first job was in that same Fidelity call center.
I didn't know that.
It's moved, obviously, but back in the day, it was there. They had 2 national call centers, and one of them was in Salt Lake. And I applied to be a security guard, and I had misread the application. I thought it said security. Turns out it was securities.
Yeah.
So we sort of see this trend a lot in the conversations I have with real financial advisors, is this, like, kind of getting into it a little bit by accident, stumbling our way into it. But then there's this moment where things switch a little bit. And you've used this term a couple of times that I want to dive into a bit, which is impact. Like, okay, so we got in, and you even pointed to maybe a specific time at Fidelity, but talk to me a little bit about the impact of the work you're doing now at Dentist Advisors. What do you hope the impact is?
Yeah, it's a great question. Impact for me is huge, and being able to make a positive impact, as I mentioned earlier, in something that matters, right? And I think there's a few things in life that actually matter. It's the relationships with those you love, it's your health, it's your wealth, right? Being able to enjoy what you have, and doing it in an intentional way. So I think the impact that I hope to have now is just that, is if I can even just a little bit help my clients live a little bit more intentionally, or you've talked about this in the One Page Financial Plan, you talk about this with Kitchens and your podcast, kind of this idea of like aligning your capital, the money you make that you work so hard for, and aligning that with your values. Like if I can have even a little bit of impact there in helping someone live more intentionally, then I feel like I've done what I set out to do. And this has been something that's evolved over time. Like you go from just kind of like trying to learn the business, the technical aspect of the business as much as you possibly can. You don't even know what you're really, at least I didn't know what I really wanted out of this until there's that, like you said, there's like that turning point almost. And for me, it was at the branch. And then actually even more so when I got to Dentist Advisors, because it went from this like breadth to depth. Like I went from like this generalist advisor, like trying to like have very surface level understanding of like as many topics as I could, to like now I only work with dentists. And so I think my impact on their lives can be much deeper in the value that I add for them.
Wow. Yeah, very cool. And how many people at Dentist Advisors, sorry, every once in a while I want to say dental advisors.
Everybody does. Yeah.
Well, but I think it's important. You're not advising dental, you're advising dentists.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me about how many people are there?
So we have a staff of I want to say 20 now.
Yeah. And how many sort of frontline advisor?
We have six advisors.
Okay.
Yep.
But help just talk a little bit about this idea of impact at scale, right? So now it's not just you.
Yeah.
There's is there 6 other advisors or 5 other?
There's 6 total advisors. Yeah.
6 total advisors. Like, what are the challenges of finding other people that want to be engaged at that level, that would use words like help and impact and, like serve? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think stage 1 is in the interview process and the vetting process of making sure that people are in it for the right reasons, or I shouldn't even say that they're in it for the reasons that align with us, right? Because I'm not going to sit here and say like we've got it all figured out, we do it the right way. We do it the way that we think has the highest impact for our clients. So I think the first step is the vetting process. We hire very slow, basically. Like we want to make sure we want to make sure we have the right person with the right mindset and approach that compares to what we want to do, right? So something like, for example, we want to very much make sure that someone's going to be able to collaborate and be team focused and client focused, which means we want to make sure you don't have an ego, that you're okay, getting pushed back on and giving pushback. So things like that, right? And then I think from there, to your point of like, it's way different when it's like, I was the first advisor post Reese and Ryan, right? I was the first advisor they hired out of from what was there, just like really small, intimate little shop. And they were just kind of like piecing together as they go. I feel like sometimes we still are doing that. But now it's how do we make sure that if a client comes in, they have the same experience, whether they're talking to me or they're talking to Jake or they're talking to Will or all of our advisors now. So I think having quality systems, I think having something like Elements obviously has helped us. Obviously that was created, kind of within our firm and has now expanded out to what it is. But having quality systems, having ongoing communication with advisors, we have a weekly meeting, like what's working, what's not, what can we change, listening to we record phone calls and listen and share phone calls with each other, with clients, and say, again, what's working, what's not. We pick things up from other people. So I know it's kind of an all over answer, but that's really what it comes down to, is finding this balance of and still having a boutique kind of like intimate relationship with our client, but also making sure that as we continue to grow, that's a repeatable, systematized process. So no matter what, our clients are having the same experience.
Yeah. What's been the most surprising challenge that you've faced that you've been surprised by? Like, what's the most surprising thing you've learned?
That this is really hard. I shouldn't say that surprises me, but it is really hard to find this balance of efficiency versus not that these are always like on opposite ends of the spectrum, but they can be, where it's like client experience versus efficiency, right? That's something we're always trying to find the balance of on the back end of a system, or communication with a client. Should that come from the advisor, or should that come from our associate? It's really, really difficult. And I'll say this, a challenging or a surprising challenge has come up, is like when to change something based on feedback from, let's say, one or two clients, right? Mm-hmm. So like when to actually make a change. It's really, really easy to be super reactive when you hear something from someone like, oh, that didn't work for you. Like, we should go change the entire thing. So I think trying to find when is the right time to make a change, because a lot of times those changes can be really, really difficult to implement at a larger scale. So I'd say probably that is when to know when to actually make a change versus just approach that as like a one-off scenario.
Yeah. I'm curious about, just especially from your perspective with 5 other advisors that you're involved with, what is the impact? Like what we know who it's for. It's for dentists, who your work is for, but like, what does it actually do? We all know about the spreadsheets and the calculators, fine, but what does it actually do, the work?
Yeah, I would say in the work that we've done, we've actually done some work on this, of trying to uncover this very thing, right? Like, what's the actual impact that we're having that we can, maybe that isn't tangible, but we can point to. And a theme that's come up from like quite a bit from our clients and people we talk to at events is peace of mind, right? This idea that I feel comfortable, or I feel more comfortable with my relationship with money, or something as simple as being organized and now understanding my balance sheet, or understanding where my cash is going, understanding that there's a big difference in my top line revenue, or what they call in the dental space collections, versus what I actually take home. Like, now I understand that flow. So like the end result in most cases, from again, kind of like an overarching theme, is this idea of peace of mind. And to us, that has an impact on everything. It has an impact on your health, it has an impact on your relationship with your spouse and your family. So that to us is kind of like, if we had to boil it down to one thing, it would be that.
And the one thing would be peace of mind.
Yeah. Yep.
Have you ever had anybody come in the door saying, hi, I'm here for some peace of mind?
Usually not. Usually not. Nope.
It feels so interesting to me that most of the work that we do is actually just a trick, a righteous trick, to get to the stuff that actually really matters. Like the spreadsheet, and when should I repay the loan, and the financial questions, they're all incredibly important and technically can be really challenging. And we got to be experts and pros at that. But they're also, if that's all we did, right, we're leaving this huge opportunity. I'm not even sure, would it be valuable? Sure, it would be valuable, but it's so much valuable. The value is compounded if we can get underneath just a little bit. And then we start pointing to things like peace of mind, or I have a different relationship with money. I'm still really curious. I don't feel like I'm getting the exact right question. I'm having a hard time translating the question. I'm curious about your ability to do that at scale, right? So now we're talking about peace of mind on top of Like that's really the what does it do? Well, it provides peace of mind for dentists around their use of money. Do you, as dentist advisors has grown from a small group of advisors to more and more advisors, what does it take to maintain that ability to stay focused on, look, yes, we're good with the spreadsheets, but we're trying to get you to this deeper spot? Like how have you trained people? Like what do you do there? What are the unique challenges there?
Yeah, this is something we've talked about just recently as we again go through these growing pains. One thing that I think we've discovered is always asking the right questions. I think it's meaning internally for us. Like I think it's very easy as you continue to grow and you start to see growth at, let's say, like as a company, your revenue's growing or your EBITDA or whatever it is. Use insert business metric. I think that oftentimes can lead to shifting the questions you're asking. So like, for example, when I first got to Dentist Advisors, Reese and Ryan were so adamant about the question. The fundamental question is this right for the client? Or does this improve client experience? Is this what the client would want? And I'm not saying we're still not doing that, but I'm saying it's a lot, to your point of this challenge, it becomes more challenging the bigger you get because there's just so many more moving parts. There's more employees, there's different, again, as you start to grow, it's like, okay, well, what metrics should we be tracking? And it's easy, I think, to get distracted by other questions. So I think to your question of like, how do you do this at scale? I think it's don't lose sight of those fundamental questions that got you there in the first place.
Whose job, we sometimes refer to that as sort of like guarding the light.
Yeah.
Like whose job is it to be the guardian of the light at Dentist Advisors?
I would like to think we all kind of play a role in it, in balancing this out. I think we do. I feel like we do a good job of kind of being a checks and balance system for each other, right? And so if one of us starts to deviate, there's a few of us that kind of are more regularly in meetings around, like, let's say, business growth, right? Yeah. And so I think some weeks it might be me checking someone else and like, hey, let's get back to this, or someone checking me being like, hey, you're asking the wrong question. So I'd like to think that it's kind of all of us in a certain way of trying to all just make sure we're checking each other and keeping each other balanced on what are we actually trying to accomplish, and are we asking the right questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a word for that, and it's whose job is it? Obviously it should be the company's culture.
Yeah.
To maintain that job. But I remember I went up and interviewed the head of the chief marketing officer at Arc'teryx, my favorite outdoor brand, outdoor clothing manufacturer. Yeah. And anyway, I'm not going to comment on things that have happened recently, but back in the day, and I think maybe even still now, like highest quality gear you could get. And they had been through one or two different private equity. They'd been acquired by 2 or 3 different people. I think it was 3 at that point. And I was super curious about like who protects the soul of the brand, because the soul seems to still be there even after a couple of acquisitions. And they actually could point me to the person, right? They were like, this guy, we keep him over here in the corner. Nobody's allowed to talk to him, but he comes out every once in a while. I was like, that's not the right thing. Yeah. But there was an example of somebody who actually, that was their job, was to say, hey, that's the wrong question.
Yeah.
Hey, let's not get too caught up. Hey, let's not react too strongly to that, because we have some pretty strong, and I use the term fancy feelings a lot. Like we have some pretty strong fancy feelings that we may not even be able to articulate, but we know it when we feel it. Like, no, that thing we just did, that marketing campaign feels a little off brand. That ad we ran, the interview you just did, can we use that as a teaching opportunity? So I think what is interesting about this, to me, this conversation, is it's one thing to do that when you're the guardian of the light for your own company and you're the one doing the work. It's an entirely different thing when there's 6 other client-facing advisors, plus customer support people who are talking to people, plus branding, and you got 20 plus people and you're growing like crazy. So any just like comments about that? That was a
Yeah.
little bit rambling without a
No,
question.
I love that you have that example. Like if there's an actual person they can point to. I would say for us, if I had to point to any group that like group of people that are doing it for us, I think naturally you'd look at the advisors doing the work every day with clients. So I'd say if there's anything of like protecting that culture, it would be the advisors. You just used several examples that are actually real of, we do a new marketing campaign and the advisors are like, or someone on the advisor team is like, hey, are we sure we want to do this, or pushing back on that. Now we've use the word culture, that's spot on. We want to protect that at all costs, right? I'll tell people this when I'm interviewing new team members or possible new team members is number one for us is we want to protect our culture. And this culture of no one is afraid to come and push back at any level of the company to say this doesn't feel right, or we're not asking the right questions or whatever. So I think that as long as you protect that culture and you continue to cultivate that culture and you give people the feeling of autonomy and purpose behind that, right? That they share in that purpose together. I think that helps you as you grow. People feeling safe that they can come to the managing director, they can come to me and say this doesn't feel right, and we can have that conversation without them feeling like they're going to get reprimanded. I think that's really key.
Yeah. Well, let me just wrap up with two last questions. Number one is like, what's one thing that, let's say there's somebody who just, is hired their second or third advisor, they're getting ready to really scale, like grow the firm. What's one thing you wish you had known? What's one thing you think you could tell them to make their job easier, specifically around culture, like keeping this kind of ethos of help, serve, intentional?
Yeah, and that sounds simple, but I think coming back to like your why, like what is the point, like what, and then kind of the Covey, right, the 7 Habits book, right, coming back to what Covey says is like starting with the end in mind. Again, that sounds really simple, but I think I don't think enough people in general, right, advisors, or I see this with dentists, I don't think enough people in general sit back and think, what do I want out of this? If I'm looking 10 years down the road or 20 years down the road, like let me paint this picture for myself. And are these decisions I'm making today leading me to that vision? I think I've seen it too often, again, I'll say in the dental space, where people just start growing and they allow it to grow. And I was saying earlier, they stop asking the right questions or the questions that got them there. And I think that all comes back to the fact that they're not taking a step back on a regular basis and stopping and saying, am I executing on the vision that I originally had or that I have now? Because obviously it can always change. But I think always stopping and saying, is this what I really want? And then why?
Yeah.
That would probably be the biggest thing.
Yeah, amazing. Well, Matt, let's wrap up with this question then, which is in light of what you just said. I'd planned on asking this question anyway, but it feels a little like after what you just said, it feels like anyway, if you were looking back, we're meeting, let's just say 5 years from today, and we're looking back on the last 5 years, what would have had to have occurred at Dentist Advisors for you to be really thrilled about the impact you made?
Whoa. You're saying we're 5 years in the future?
Yeah, we're sitting down to have this conversation December 19th of 2027.
Yeah.
And I'm asking you about like what happened in the last 5 years, and you're thrilled. Like what do you hope? What would have had to have happened in terms, and specifically around the impact that you've made?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I would probably say, if I'm pointing to one thing, if I looked at one thing, again, 5 years from now and looking back, I would look at the amount of clients or people we were helping. That's always kind of been what we're trying to focus on in the dental space, is how do we expand our reach when it comes to the different areas that we have in our business. So for example, content, and then we have different service models in which clients are able to engage with us. So I'm not even saying like, oh, we have to have so many clients in the private wealth management service model. how many listeners of our podcast do we have, right? Have we grown that at a healthy clip? How many clients do we have? What does our growth look like? Because I think it's very common in the advisor space. I mean, you know better than anyone of like this idea of assets under management kind of being like the ultimate metric, right?
Right.
For me, I think I would look at number of clients. So number of clients that we have that we're able to serve and to help, along with still protecting that culture. If we're able to do that in 5 years from now, and I don't have like this number, we have to be tripled by then, but that's the number I would be looking at, is how many clients did we grow by, and were we able to maintain our culture along the way?
Is that just basically just a proxy for impact, a way to measure impact?
I think it is. And I think it's because of the way we approach it, meaning, you know, the only way that clients find out about us basically, or that dentists find out about us, is through our content, through our educational content, or through referrals. Right. That's the only way. And so I look at that as kind of a really easy way to say, like, if we've grown our client base, that means that we're having a really positive impact with education and content, which is the foundation of everything that we do. And we're getting referrals, which means our clients are happy with what, and they're able to put their personal reputation on the line to go out and tell people about us. So that to me is like a really good proxy of saying you've done your job and adding and having a positive impact, and the word is spreading.
Yeah. Amazing. So good, my friend, Matt. Thanks.
Yes, Carl, thanks so much.
Chat with us.
Yeah, it was awesome. I loved it. Hopefully I can do it again with you sometime.
Yeah, for sure. Cheers, my friend.